how to set up your dive computer for the first dive. So you just got your first brand new dive computer. Congrats. Now what? Most likely you're asking yourself, what do I need to do to get this one working? Can I take it diving right now? In fact, you could jump in the water straight away. So let's do that. Thanks to this video sponsor, Shearwater, the company that is making top-notch dive computers, I got to take a brand new Shearwater turn on a dive. As you can see, I hadn't set it up before going. This was right before my first dive of the trip. I wanted to see how easy it is to set it up. Could I do it straight away right on the dive boat? And as you can see here, pulling off the screen protector, quick changing into nitrox 32, the percentage that we were diving with on this dive boat. With a few pushes of a button, I was ready to go on my first dive. This was just pulling out this one out of the box and diving straight away. So yes, you can take your dive computer straight out of the box and into the water. But now let's go over how do you get the most out of the dive computer? What does all the information mean? And how do you customize it if you even need to customize it to get it working better for you? Before we get into the setting up of a dive computer, I want to talk about something exciting, a giveaway, because thanks to Shearwater research, we are giving one of the viewers of this video a Shearwater turn dive computer. One of these I have right here on my wrist. Whether you're about to buy your first dive computer or looking for an upgrade, this is your chance to get one of the best brands, a dive computer that is straight out of the box, ready to dive with, as you just saw. This is super easy getting into it, but I'll tell you exactly how you enter into this giveaway later in the video, so make sure you stick around. So you got a sleek and shiny dive computer, but what do all the numbers actually mean? If this is your first dive computer, then at first glance, these numbers might seem a bit intimidating, but trust me, it's so much easier than you think. Your dive computer is basically your personal dive buddy that tracks everything that you're doing, and it will help you stay safe. So here we have the dive computer. When you turn it on, let's run first through the dive modes, because that's the first thing you'll actually need to set if you're diving anything but air. So depending on the dive computer, a dive computer like this one, the big one, they will usually do diving in nitrox, tree gas nitrox, etc. Some of the larger dive computers will do tech diving. What we're touching on is recreational diving, but smaller dive computers has other cool features that we want to cover. So this one is set to air, but let's just go through the settings of different dive modes, because as you can see here, it has several dive modes. Air, nitrox, so if you're diving anything but 21%, you set it to nitrox, and then you can set the percentage. Then we have tree gas nitrox, so this is 3 different tanks of 3 different mixes that you can set and you can change on your dive. And then we have gauge and free diving mode. Most dive computers has a gauge, but often only the smaller dive computers will have the free diving mode. Free diving is what you can use when you're free diving, skin diving, anything in terms of that will track your dives down without tracking your NDL metric that we'll cover in later on this. And gauge is something you can use for diving if you just want to track your depth and your time in, but it will not track your actual dive as a dive computer. All right, let's set it to air, because that's what we're going to be using on this video. Oh, there we go. It was already set on air. And then go out and let's talk about the numbers on the screen. So you can see here I have 2 dive computers. They're both from Shearwater, and again, thanks Shearwater Research for sponsoring this video. But let's run through all the numbers on a dive computer, and keep in mind that some dive computers show more data, some show less data. But I've chosen the Shearwater Turn here because I do think that's a really good recreational starting computer. It does not have all of the technical capabilities as some of the other dive computers on the market, but it does have some, so you can get a glance of what technical dive features a dive computer can do as well. Running through the first number, that's the number up here. This says 0.0. As you can see here on another screen as well, while I'm diving, it starts tracking my depth. So this is the number that shows the depth that you're at the current point you're looking at it. So of course here at the surface where I'm recording, it's at 0.0, but as you see, when we're diving down, it starts counting up. And this is a number that we keep an eye out for as any diver. If you're in open water, your max is 18 meters and you don't want to exceed that. If you're advanced at 30 meters, you don't want to exceed that. So make sure that you track your depth throughout the time, because that is one of the most important metrics that we track as divers. Where dive computers are different than from dive tables as divers began diving with is that the dive computer tracks the diving and records the depth. So the depth will be recorded all the way through the dive, and then it uses this to calculate the NDL. The NDL is the number that is standing right here. NDL stands for no decompression limit. So this is the limit, the time you have at a certain depth. If you're diving down to 30 meters, you might have around 20 minutes. If you're diving down to 40 meters, you might have 7 minutes. And as you spend time on that depth, the counter is going to go down. And this is, of course, because you're spending that time and absorbing nitrogen in your body. So this is basically the number you want to avoid hitting 0, because as soon as that one hits 0, you go into what's called decompression diving or deco diving, where you need to stop on the way up before you reach the surface to clear your body of nitrogen. And when you're a recreational diver, you're not trained to do decompression diving, so you shouldn't do that. So always stay well within this limit. I'll come into more of like how you can set up an alert on a dive computer to make sure you don't exceed this number. NDL will count down, as I said, when you're on the dive, but you'll also see the number going up again. And that's when you're ascending slowly. As you spend some time at 30 meters, you will see the number going down, but as you go up, you spend more time on a shallower depth, and the number will increase again to give you more time on this depth. And this is how a modern dive profile looks. You dive down and then you slowly go up. If you ever dive with dive tables, you know that how we calculated diving back then, we had a fixed depth. Then multi-level planning came in, where you could do several stops along the way, but everything was planned and you had to follow these exact depths. Whereas here, using a dive computer, you can stop whenever you want. You can spend time there as long as you don't exceed your NDL. Moving on, we have our dive time. This is your dive time from when you started your dive until current time you're looking at it. So as soon as you start to dive, most dive computers will start tracking when you start diving down. A lot of the dive computers, you can set the settings. Do you want to start it at 1 meter, 3 meters, 5 meters, whatever you want to do, you can start your dive at that point. This one is set to 1 meter. I think that's a really good metric. As soon as I go down further than 1 meter, if I haven't set it to like an apnea or freediving mode, then it's because I'm diving and I would like it to start tracking straight away. After 5 meters is definitely way too late. Up here, a number that you can't see is an ascent rate, is how fast you're moving up in the water column. So as this number go down, the ascent rate over here will start going up. Different dive computers will show this differently. With the turn here, it's showing this as a bar. Some dive computer will show it as a percentage. Some will have a bar going here at the side. Every dive computer is different in showing this, but there's a way for the screen to show that you're moving up in the water column. And as soon as you start getting too high, some of them will flash, some of them will color, some of them will do an alert if you're moving up too fast. And that's because our ascent rate shouldn't be faster than 10 meters per 1 minute. That's a really nice thing to have, and that's where dive computers become so good to have, because you have all of this data, you have your NDL, you have your ascent rate, and it's just a really important feature to have in. We have our 21% down here. This is the oxygen that it's using. As you can see up here, it's set to air mode, but you can also set it to nitrox, and then it will always show the percentage of air that it's calculating with the NDL right now. And that's really nice to have in. Then we have a max depth. So this is the max depth for the dive that, well, this is for the dive that I did 20 days ago, but this could also show the max depth of the current dive that you're doing. Then there's a bunch of things that will change throughout the dive. For example, your NDL, as we talked about, if you exceed this number, it will change into a deco. So it will show on this dive computer, and every dive computer is different, it will show a big red deco because now you're in a different dive mode, and then it will show when to stop. So it will show 6 or 5 meters, and then a timer will show next to that one, counting up of how long do you need to stop at that current depth. And again, if you're not trained for decompression diving, you shouldn't go into it. But if you happen to exceed it, you can still follow your dive computer and end your dive safely based on this. Safety stop is another reminder that the dive computer will show. I think on this dive computer shows up here, but again, this you can actually change the setup of this dive computer. So I'm not completely sure, but what it will do is show a big green bar where it says safety, and then a timer will start counting down from 3 minutes or 5 minutes if you set it to that, and then down until the safety stop is cleared, and then it will say cleared. It will also vibrate and tell you. So this is really nice to have in. The safety stop, or usually dive computers will also alert you if you go too shallow. Doing a safety stop will tell you to go a bit down. If you go too deep again, it will stop the counting, because then it most likely means that you continue diving somehow around that. And then any dive computer, again, is different. Here we have different menus that you can go through. This is on the surface, so it will show a bit differently, but here you can see the last dive. So this is, once you're done, it will actually start counting up with the surface of the wall. That will start with minutes and hours, but now it's days as well. You can see your last dive, you can see how long it was, how deep it was. You can see here, so this is a transmitter-friendly dive computer. This is the TX version. You can also see here, this is the turn dive computer that does not support the transmitters, but this one does. So if I had a transmitter connected, this would show my air. And this is another feature you have on dive computers. Moving on, we have a compass. It's, again, not all dive computers that has a compass, but some does. For these, when they have a digital compass, what's really good is you can mark a heading, and then you can actually see this heading here. So as I'm moving around, you can see the heading, you can see which way you should go. Really cool feature about the turn is you can actually show this one right here. So as you can see here, I actually have the compass heading. So if I flip away from the compass screen, I can still see this small compass needle out here. Now we're coming into gradient factor, TF99 and TTS. So gradient factor, that's the algorithm, what it's set to. When you are a new diver, you can change the settings of a gradient factor. I'll come into how we change the settings of these dive computers, but know that like gradient factors is the conservatism of a dive computer. And if you don't know what you're doing on that one, just leave it to the standard. GF99 is, again, working with the algorithm and how long you've been diving. This number is going to start counting up of how close you are to bubble forming in your body. TTS is time to service, so a time from where you are in the water column to how long it'll take you to reach the surface. Shearwater, and I think that's the only dive computer on the market. I'm not completely sure how this tissue loading, so as you're diving, the tissue loading bar is going to go up. Closer to red is bubble forming, like decompression thickness, and closer to green is cleared. So technical divers sometimes like to look at this one as there's on their safety stop or deco stop, this is going to go down. And we have temperature and we have battery as well. Battery is also shown up here so you can see how much battery you have. So always never go in with a too low battery. Temperature as well is a good metric to have. You can use that to track while you're diving what your experience. If you experience a really cold thermocline coming in, you can actually also track that on your dive computer. So that was the basics of numbers that you'll experience in the dive computer. Again, every dive computer is different, so it's not all dive computers that will show all of these data. Some will show even more. If you're going into technical diving, they'll have even more numbers, and you can customize this. So for the turn, and I think all the shearwood is actually a really cool thing about that is that you can customize the layout. So if you want to see NDL here, if you want to see your max depth all the time, if you want to see your TTS all the time, you can actually put these numbers in here and customize that. But let's talk about customization, because what do you need to do to make a dive computer more of your own? Should you change the settings to help the dive computer fit your needs? By default, dive computers coming out is set up pretty well to work for a diver diving air. The shearwood turn, as you could see, comes complete the setup. All I had to do was to change it into nitrox, and then I was good to go. Some dive computers need to set time and day. If you want to use that data, it's nice to have in. Some dive computers, you need to do a lot of customization where you pull in your whole profile. You do that usually via apps. This is, again, the more high-end dive computers. But one of the important metrics that you should change is basically the metrics versus imperial. This makes sense. If you're using the imperial system, change to that. If you're using the metric system, change to that. You can also change between using Celsius and Fahrenheit. Usually this is done with one change, but some of the dive computers has options for using Fahrenheit and the metric system, or vice versa. Pick the system you're comfortable with. Alarms and notifications is another thing that you can change. So most new dive computers, mid-level dive computers and above, you can customize the alarms. Some of the lower ends, you just have the alarms that is set up. So some would have an audible alarm, some will have a vibration alarm, some will have both, some will have none. Safety stop settings. This is where you can change what you're doing. As you can see on the shearwood turn, this one can change between no safety stop. It can change between the amount of time I want to do, or it can change between a timer just starting from when I hit the 5 meters, 15 feet. Changing how conservative your dive computer is also something that you can do. Going into settings, you can change this. Here you can see the algorithm. This one is using the Bullman 16C with gradient factors, and you can change this. So going into the settings here, you have the options of low, medium, high. This is how conservative it is, or you have the custom. I want to stress this quite a lot. If you don't know what you're doing, you should never change it to custom. I would also caution with going to a lower setting of the dive computer to how conservative it is, especially if you don't know exactly what you're doing. So please stick to either the medium, that's usually what it's set to, or go into high if you think that you are at risk. If this was a hard day at work and you're out diving, or you've been doing a lot of stressing activities lately, well, then you can set it to a more conservative dive computer. That's always going more conservative is okay. Going less conservative, I would advise against it for most dive occasions. Other things to change, and as I mentioned before, I switched the nitrox straight away from opening up the dive computer. If you're diving on air, you don't need to change anything. If you're diving nitrox, you can, as you can see here with the dive computer, first I'm switching to the dive mode to nitrox. So air is always 21%, that's air. Then changing to nitrox, I can go down and change the nitrox level. So how much oxygen do I have in my tank? Always make sure you calculate this before you change it so you have the correct percentage. For most newer divers, dive computers, it's really easy to change. I do have experience of older dive computers where I had to change it for other people because they actually didn't know how to go into this dive computer change because they were always just diving on air. It's always good when you get your dive computer, read through the manual or check out how you change to nitrox, change back again so you're not diving at 32, but then the air is changed to 21, you don't know how to change that back. So changing this in, knowing how to change it as well is really important. Again, with the shear water turn and most of the modern dive computers, it's fairly simple to find into where you're changing it. Whereas the older dive computers or the more budget-friendly dive computers, it becomes a bit more simple because you also go down in numbers of buttons. Customizing your dive computer display, so changing the screen settings. So when you first turn on your dive computer, again, the default information shown is the essentials that we talked about, NDL, depth, and time, and so on. But sometimes you want to show different things, or you want to adjust it. Some of the dive computers will do that, some won't. So the shear water turn, shear water in general, is known for being able to customize your screen, which is a really good thing. So you can adjust the brightness of the visibility. You can make the screen simple layout or more detailed. You can basically put in the information that you want to have shown. Let's walk through how you customize your dive computer display to make this one work best for you. Adjusting the home screen layout. Some dive computers will let you rearrange it. So again, with the turn here, that's an option. Out of the box, the main screen shows the depth, NDL, dive time, and temperature in the standard layout. But if you want to switch things around, maybe you want your tank pressure if you're using the Turn TX, or perhaps you want to see your ascent rate as a larger number. Some divers prefer simpler screens with fewer data, where it's more clear. That's also if you have problems with your eyesight. To adjust this, you just navigate to the display settings and choose which data fields you want to show and where. Now, divers who want to do that get more out of the dive computer. They know where they have the different displays and they can customize it to their choosing. If you like your TTS, time to surface, always shown, that's a really good number to have as soon as you're moving into technical diving. If you want your air to be shown higher because you're afraid of running out, then put that number as it's more clear. I would recommend you to always have your NDL shown visibly as well, and air consumption if you're having an air integration. Wrapping this up, do you need to change any of the settings? Not really. They all work great out of the box. But when you do it, you also make the dive computer your own. You tweak a few settings, you try it, you make it reflect the diving that you're doing and the diver that you are. And it only takes a few minutes. And when you're doing it, you also get to know your dive computer just a bit better. All right, now let's talk about how you can win a shear water turn dive computer, one of the ones I have right here on my wrist. So entering is easy. All you have to do is these 3 steps. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us reach more divers. Subscribe to our newsletter. It's the first link in the description. And it's also where we'll announce the winners. And then last but not least, drop us a comment and telling us which of the parts of a dive computer is most important, which of the features is most important for you. That's it, and we'll pick a winner in the comments and announce it on the newsletter, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. Thanks again to Shearwater Research for supporting this video, making us be able to create this, and again for giving away a Shearwater turn to one of you. All right, that's it for today, and as always, happy diving.